This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masteringencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode. Here we go, everybody. Hey, welcome. Larry Bailey, Mortgage Workflow Partners. Today is Tuesday, April 22nd. Hopefully enjoying Earth Day. According to Apple, I've earned my rings for the day and got my special award, so thank you, Apple. Every Tuesday, for those that are watching this on replay, we meet every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we try to talk about a topic that is important to the community from at least my perspective, or if you have something that you want to talk about, I usually cater it around. Today's topic's all about how to leverage Encompass and how to make using a third party your quote unquote last resort. A little dramatic, I know, me being a third party especially, right? And so it's kind of like I want to poke fun at myself for being a third party and saying, hey, listen, you should think about us last. And I say that with all sincerity. In all of my experience, the reality is that there are thousands of companies that are using Encompass, and I can't help thousands of people every day. But I feel very strongly about building a community, which is what Mastering Encompass is all about. So thanks very much for being a part of it. And I believe that there's a way that you can help yourself and you can help find information or be shown information that's easy to find. And when you do need that extra layer of help, that's when you need a third party, right? And so that's what today's conversation is all about. A couple of key points. For those that are just getting in, again, we're talking about the conversation of really making leveraging a third party your last resort. And that's not to be anything other than to say we should want to really focus in on exploiting everything that we have at our fingertips in native technology that we're paying for before we go seeking third parties, and also services too, like training, support teams, those kinds of things. You always want to have your company squeeze everything it can out of what it's already paying for before going to seek support from a third party. So that's what we're going to talk about. It is a community call, so there is a chat and a Q&A feature here in our meeting. Please feel free to use that. It is being recorded for replay, so keep that in mind. Everything that we put on here for chat or in the screen always gets recorded, so keep that in mind. All right, gang, it is April 22nd and 2025, and I put that date only because if you roll the clock back, right, for those that don't know my full history, I went to work for Ellie Mae back in 2012 as an implementation project manager. You really didn't have third parties back then, right? This is 13 years ago. You had a couple of companies that had kind of started to figure out that there might be a market for some plugins. These are companies. Some of these companies are still around today in a large way. Some aren't, and some are actually gone completely. And so the idea of third party isn't just technology, but it's also services and coaching, education, those kinds of things. And the reason why these crept up, they really started to blossom around I want to say like 2014, 2015, and then it would get into like the 17s, 18s, 19s, 20s. Like it just exploded, and it became almost a given that if you're on Encompass, you have to use a third party because Encompass just can't do what you need it to do. And I've always wrestled with that concept. I've always tried to put workflow before technology. And what that means is I always wanted to something that I already had before I had to go and pay somebody else. That's me being very cost effective with what I'm doing. It's also me being a little bit more interested than most in figuring things out. Some people they don't care. Like they just don't care. They'd rather pay you to clean your house, or pay them to clean your house than go clean it yourself. That's fine. There's all kinds of people, but the when it comes to companies, every penny counts. 2025 is yet another year of complete chaos in the lending industry. I don't know if you guys pay attention to interest rates, but they are not exactly doing what everybody had hoped. Not to mention, there are wild swings to the price of money, which are interest rates, and that leads to a lot of craziness in terms of products that can go to the street, loans that can close at certain rates, a lot of pressure on secondary teams and post-closing teams to get these things delivered. So, how does all that tie into our conversation today about third parties and these kinds of things? First of all, I want to really stress that the whole concept of somebody besides the company that creates the platform are good. These are good companies. These are good people that are doing great work. Some really good examples are I like to use Salesforce as a really good example because number one, they're everywhere all over the world. Number two, they do a great job of promoting other people who leverage Salesforce, and these extra third parties specialize in development, or they specialize in onboarding, or they specialize in support. And so that's why I like to use Salesforce. Plus, if you've never used Salesforce, on the back end, it's a relationship-based, object-based system, which is remarkably close to Encompass. Remarkably close. So if you understand Encompass, you could understand Salesforce. Another good example is I just recently switched over at Mortgage Workflow Partners. We switched over to HubSpot to use for our front end, meaning our CRM and one of our website channels and some marketing stuff. And I'm looking at the some other pieces with it. But my point is that HubSpot sold me their platform, and I can use it on my own pretty well. I used it well enough to screw up in the beginning because they didn't really explain how something was configured properly, and it blew up a lot of my Teams links meetings. Not good. So they put me in touch with a third party who, in one phone call, I felt he did for me what I helped do for others. In like one phone call, cut through the nonsense, got me straightened out, and it was a great experience. And I'll go back to leveraging his services again very soon. So there's a point where there are reasons why third parties are great to have. But what I want you to really, the first piece of today is I want you to really think about why you've engaged that third party and what are they doing to move your company forward. So some good examples of what to think about, again, because we got a fairly large audience of all different kinds of people in here from different companies. And the idea is, when you think about why you're using a third party, what gap are they filling, and how are they getting you to the point where you don't need them anymore? This is always a thing for me. And if you're working with a third party who feels like they're building a wall around you to where you can't escape, that's a red flag for me. It's a huge red flag for me. And so the takeaway from that is, if they're building, if the third party is causing an experience to where you can't leave, what ends up happening a lot of times is companies just abandon the whole thing. So good examples are, I'm working with companies that one particular client literally left Encompass to go to another LOS. And it's now 3 months into it. And of course, they're having their own set of experiences that aren't exactly what they were hoping for. And in that particular LOS, there is no third party. There isn't. It's just that company. And so that company has to develop solutions within their own four walls, so to speak, their own technology walls. And so what's interesting is what I tend to walk into when we do these settings reviews and these workflow reviews, and I start to look at, well, what third parties do you have? What are they doing? When was the last time they were reviewed? And why do you still need them? A lot of times companies can't answer those questions. They have no idea. They don't know when they got them because it was somebody else. They don't really know what they're doing because they weren't part of the implementation. They can't really tell you anything about it because they're busy, because there's no problem with it, right? administratively. And then the last thing is, why are we still using it? It's because, well, it's in there. And so unwinding these situations is problematic, which goes back to my example I gave a moment ago, which is to say, if you're not working your company towards where you don't need third parties, again, that's a red flag for me. Now, if your company has decided that it's more cost effective to build a relationship with that company, that third party, to support you in some way, that's great. All the power to you. Just want to make sure that's a conscious choice and not a limitation that's being being forced upon you. The next thing I want to bring up is a term that Bill Packer actually shared with me when I worked at American Financial Resources. I was just a young lad, and his big thing was exploiting before exploring. And so I always credit, I know he didn't come up with it, but that he was the one that introduced me to that term. And so what that means in English is, if you're not positive that what you have is going to fail, why aren't you going to try to use it? So some good examples of this today are Consumer Connect. Okay, 2 years ago, or even last year, maybe, the Consumer Connect conversation with a lot of companies was a non-sequitur, is a non-starter, non-sequitur, non-starter. I don't want to talk about it. And the reason why is because there was no native app. Well, now we know we have a native app with Consumer Connect. So now what is it? Well, now it's, well, I'm used to using it and everybody's used to it, and therefore I'm not going to change. And what we're finding is when we go into organizations, we say, well, first of all, everybody doesn't feel that way. Pick somebody who doesn't feel that way and build it, give it to them. Earlier today in the admin training, we were talking about the differences between HTML notification templates and standard desktop notification templates, which are used for web-based document workflows, which is part of 25.2 update, which I'm recording and releasing by beginning of next week for the 25.2 release class. So if you took my 25.1 release class, stay tuned for the 25.2 release class for all the lessons. My point for bringing this up is the question was, well, we use Blend. Will this impact? Or we use another POS that is currently SDK. Well, I said, well, what happens if they move to API? Not if, but when they move to API. And what we don't know is how is Blend or any other POS, Encino or any other POS, going to interact? If you look at like the big POS, which is all API based, it's always been API based. Those are using your notification. You can use the notification templates through there. You don't have to, but you can. My point is that you need to be aware of all your settings before you just discount this opportunity for knowledge. You want to make sure you understand exactly why something's going to fail. And I know it's not what you usually think. You usually think, well, let me focus on what works. My brain always works a little bit differently. Like, why can't I use that tool for the outcome that I need? Where does it fail? And the reason why I go down that path is because, number one, if it does fail, I can 100% know that I don't have to waste my time on that thing again. But number two, I sometimes have an opportunity to work with that tool in ways that I had not done before, and I learned something new that probably nobody else knows. Knowledge is power. Power becomes value, and again, because of what we do at Mortgage Workflow Partners, knowing something that somebody else doesn't know or isn't aware of can be extraordinarily rewarding, both to share that with our clients, but then also to charge them for that, to make money, right? And so for you as admins, I've talked to you about this a lot. For everybody on this call and listening to this replay, the more times you can go to your company to say, I can save you money for doing certain things, or I can give you more money, or I can have you keep more of your money, the more valuable you become to them as an administrator, right? And so, or to the next employer, whatever you're doing. Or if you're listening to this and you're not an administrator, do this and become an administrator and go get paid. All right. So on that note, I'm going to bring up one thing. I made a promise to my ICE partner. I'm going to bring this because I think it's great timing once more to try to address anybody who's still concerned or confused, I guess is a better way to say it, confused about what's happening in October of this year. And so on the recording, really, really clear. This is public information. I don't know if you've received this yet, but it will be going out. It's just a reminder that there is an SDK transition deadline happening on October 31st, 25. How does this tie into today's information? Because the next thing I'm going to show you is going to talk to you about what's currently available from ICE native to Encompass right now that you don't need third-party tech on. So if you get this, and I'll post this in the community, and again, you might be receiving this if you haven't already via email, but this little link, so before we get to the link, as a reminder, all of your services need to be transferred to EPC. Hopefully every single one of your services you're using is already says Partner Connect when you go to order it. If it doesn't say Partner Connect on the service, that means you're still using SDK-based ordering, which you don't want to if you can help it. Make sure you're working with your vendors. And for those that are using POS platforms that are not API-based, April 22nd, like what are they doing? So hopefully they got a plan. Hopefully they're going to stick to the plan. Get it, because after October 31st, non-EPC is not going to work. Non-API is not going to work from third-party service providers. Now, if you're using SDK-based technology in your system, there's two things you want to make sure you do. Three things, technically. The first thing is make sure you get your SDK waiver signed, right? So you want to make sure you contact your ICE rep. It's outlined here. And make sure you get that SDK transitional access form. And you want to make sure you get it back to them. I'm going to tell you, get it back to them now. Don't wait. Just get it back to them now. That's the first thing. The second thing you've got to do is you've got to make sure that you, as much as you can, migrate your SDK-based tech to API tech. Number two. Number three, and that's by October 31st, right? It's right there in plain sight. The third thing you've got to do is make a plan. Now, I've said this privately, and I'm going to say it on the recording here for everybody to listen to me replay, is just because you have the waiver doesn't mean you have the waiver to not make a plan. Eventually, you're going to have a problem, and it's not what you think. Your problem is part of your company is going to be using Encompass Web, and the other part of your company is going to be using Encompass Desktop. And they're going to want the same experience with the thing that they do in their workflow. And if the technology you're using in desktop is not available in web, and it needs to be, you're going to have a problem. And that's really where the situation lies, right? Would ICE love to get you off of SDK? Absolutely. Because they want to focus on API only instead of having to worry about SDK anymore. But they're not going to leave you high and dry, right? So the idea is, get the waiver, transfer over everything you're using SDK to API as you can, but you got to have a plan to get this thing done. If you're trying to escape the third-party extra fees because they're API-based, it goes back to how I started this whole conversation. What's the plan, Stan? If the plan is to keep you locked in and keep you having to pay more and more, maybe you need to change the way you do business. And so that's kind of the next thing I wanted to kind of go into on today's call is it's not 2017 anymore. Again, take you back to 2017, 2018 with the proliferation of plugins that we've all seen, right? In Encompass especially. It's 2025, and hopefully you're working on database technology, or database workflows. So by the way, I skipped over the link. So if you click that link right there, Encompass native functionality, it's going to bring you to the website. Check this sucker out. So this is an FAQ on ICE's website, mortgagetech.ice.com. And it says, which Encompass features can replace popular SDK plugins? So this is native to Encompass right now. Address verification, home counseling automation, AUS automation, requesting documents from borrowers. Also sending documents to borrowers is automated now. Conditions management that's for enhanced conditions. Notify me is if somebody else is in the file on the web, you can get notified when that loan file becomes available for full edit. automatic role assignments, automatic email notifications, updating custom fields, through things like reliable ways, such as services being updated or virtual fields being completed, like a condition status changing or a document being received into a particular e-folder. And then, of course, incomplete application automation, and then other automation based upon everything it says here. All native stuff, gang. All native stuff. And so, having said all that, this is why I wanted to really talk about, it's not 2017 anymore, because you can do a lot. And part of the game here is your workflow. I know if you guys follow me anywhere on social, you hear me talk about workflow before. Workflow first. And if you're not taking that to heart, I would encourage you to. So when we go through and you discover that, well, hey, we need a piece of extra technology that's not native to Encompass because we're doing this thing, and the only way to do that thing is through this extra. Good example is sending attachments for pre-approval letters. This came up in the community earlier. I responded via video, and I'll just explain this concept real quick here for everybody in case you guys didn't see it. Notification templates that are native to Encompass that leverage Consumer Connect do not allow you to add attachments. There's a reason for this, and I for those, hopefully you can appreciate this statement. For those that have a credit card or have an online banking platform, when those institutions contact you, they don't attach a statement. I don't know if I've ever had an email of an attachment of a statement, right? That would be insane because of the opportunity for that to be picked up by a bad actor. But yet we want to send pre-approval letters via email with attachments. We're supposed to be fiduciaries. We're supposed to be financially responsible for the privacy of our borrowers' data, and to make sure that the companies that could access this information as bad actors can't. And so how do we do that? We make sure everything is locked away behind a portal. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the workflow that was in the community today that I responded to, that particular community member was confused on how to leverage notification templates for loan officers to send pre-approval letters. And so, of course, my response is stop sending pre-approval letters. Workflow change. What do? You send a thing that says, hey, we've got an updated important information about your loan file. Please click here to go to your secure portal, wherever that portal is, right? It could be one place or another. In this particular case, it was Consumer Connect. And then I said, the loan officer would be like, hey, I just uploaded that pre-approval letter to your portal. Grab it when you can. It's no big deal. It's a good reason to talk to them. And how does all this tie into it's not 2017? It just means that things change. Like I don't mean to pick on that particular point in time, but the idea is that you want to make sure that you're not just taking workflows the way they always were. This time next week, I'll be on a plane to California, to Long Beach, to speak at Farm Credit Services. I'm actually speaking with Laura Brandeo, which is exciting. I haven't seen her in a while. She and I used to work together at American Financial Resources. And we're speaking about innovation and impact and change in mortgage operations. My section is all about innovation. And so the way you innovate is you have to imagine what something could be, and then you have to do it. You have to actually do it. So when it comes to this topic of third parties, there's going to be times where you're going to be stuck. And you're going to need a third party. But I want you to just document why you're stuck. And I want you to imagine, what if you didn't have the money for the third party? How else would you be creative? And one of the ways that you can be creative is to not do the thing that people are saying to do, or come up with an alternative way to do the thing that people are saying you got to do. So I want to leave that with you on that topic. And I'm not seeing any chats or any questions. So if I'm missing that, let me know, but I don't see anything up there. Last thing I really bring up for today, two things. Number one is ICE mortgage technology is not slowing down in terms of how they're innovating Encompass to really focus in on what it can deliver to us as a platform. 25.2 came out this weekend as a test. It's going to drop into production May 17th is still the date. I'm going to strongly encourage that you go and look at products that you're not using today. So a good example of this is the Developer Connect release notes. I normally don't read them because I'm not a developer, but I wanted to read them because I wanted to get some foreshadowing to what's coming into the actual product of Encompass. The first place I'm going to go look to see is what Amy Cross and her team are doing with Developer Connect, because if it doesn't exist in API, it can't exist in Encompass. So it's a precursor, right? So I would encourage you to at least check that out, even if you're not a developer. You don't need to understand what the words mean, but you can plainly see that there are features that are being made available. And that means two things. Number one, that means if you're working with third parties or other developers, these are things now that you can think about having them help you with your business. And the second thing is that's coming to Encompass. And that means that the Encompass core product that we don't need developers for is going to be updated in some way. So hopefully that's meaningful for you. And as we go through the rest of this year, the goal is, I'm hearing and watching that we're going to have 5 major releases this year. Like we usually get 3, 4 in a really fast year, but 5 is something we haven't seen in a very long time. So I don't know if we'll get there, but I do want to remind everyone that ICE is from the top down and from Intercontinental Exchange CTO mayor. Everyone's passion is focused in one thing, which is to give you the best possible experience in your workflow using Encompass out of the box, and also with its integration partners. And so, having said all that, again, I kind of follow like a small group of people, other professionals in the circles of third parties. But one of the things that Matt constantly says from the big POS is no long-term contracts. So, on that topic, if you do have to go and leverage a third party, make sure that they're not giving you a long-term contract. Make sure that they're not boxing you into something, and ask them, when will I not need you anymore? Like, that's a fair question. If you know why you need them now, when do they stop becoming necessary? I can tell you that when I walk in as mortgage workflow partners, our goal is to somehow get you to the point where you no longer need us for a lot of projects. For things like we do for help desk, that's going to carry on probably. But when it comes to like admin training and coaching, that's ongoing also to a certain extent. But when it comes to like admin support or project support, there's a time when that project should be over. Again, unless the company doesn't really want to invest in their own Encompass administrators, which is fine. So I wanted to kind of end on that note, which is to say, when you're going down your 25 planning for the rest of this year, there's a checklist out that I'm going to be publishing to help remind you of things that you still have to get accomplished. And hopefully you can get that done. If you can't and you're looking to a third party, hopefully today's conversation has been helpful and meaningful for you. I do want to remind you of one really important thing, which is next year, meaning 2026, everything that's been happening this year in terms of change will be even more impactful for your business's choice of workflow and how they're getting things done, because now you're going to actually watch your business see what everybody else has done. This happens a lot when you go through a major change of how things are going through in Encompass. There's a lot of companies that pull back and they don't want to be the first ones to the party, right? They want to let the party kind of settle up and see how things are going. I think under normal circumstances, that's not a bad plan, but I do want to just say for this group, because there's a lot of admins on here today, just be mindful that as we get into Q2 for 25, it's going to happen really quick. Summertime always goes fast. We're going to get into Q3, and then you're going to get into like year-end cleanup and then it's going to be Q1 26, and your company's going to be wanting to know, well, what else should we be doing? How's everything else gone? I just want to make sure that you're watching all along and having this conversation with you internally, because if you're finding out that budgets are restricted, or you're finding you want to get these other projects done, but there's limitations, just make sure it's not make sure it's something that you've thought about and talked with any of your third-party partners that you're working with, to make sure they're promoting you in a way to help make sure 2025 is successful for you, and 2026 is, but they come second, right? It's always you first. It's always you as a primary driver, and that's really, again, for me, it might sound odd because I'm a third party, but I do feel strongly that you should have all this behind you. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. Does anybody have any questions or situations they want to go over? We're going to be updating the rest of this year with active workshops in terms of how to leverage certain settings. There's a ton of folks that are still not using like one-time passcode, or not using native automations that are available, especially for things like schedulers and other notifications, things like that. Let's see, we got a question. I love it. So I'm going to just read it out loud for those that don't see it. Lisa says, do you see ICE adding some customization options to desktop that we use third-party apps? Do you think update on web? We use a loan banner and a notifier to let some people know that they feel like they can't live without them. I don't know. I think the notify me option of that notification tool that's used on desktop by a lot of different providers, it's probably going to stay there. Will it always be third party? My guess is probably not. Like, if I had to put money on the table, I'd say ICE will figure out a way to put that into desktop through API. So right now, the notify me option on web only works for web, but should that work on desktop? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they're just going to wait you out and they don't have to worry about you using desktop this time next year. Lisa, what do you think? And as far as loan info banner, it's for those extra fields across the top. If you look at web, it's already there. So I don't know. I don't know about desktop. I've always felt the user interface hacks on desktop have always been hacks. Truthfully, Ellie Mae hated them. ICE always hated them, but clients loved it. So there's always been this conflict. And anyway, so Kelly says this just came in. Important timeline: due to critical change in Encompass, our signing platform will be incompatible with legacy. Make sure that you migrate your 4506. Kelly, who's that service provider, please? So here's a good example from Kelly. Thanks for posting that, Kelly. I'm telling you right now, like, everybody who's been kind of sleeping on EPC integration, if you don't have all your service providers on EPC, make sure you follow up with their calendar. This is from ICE, but it doesn't say what vendor. So I guess you need to check with your 4506C vendor, Kelly, and anybody else watching this, to make sure that if your 4506C service is not using EPC, you've got till July 31st. Be warned. Thank you, Kelly, for putting that. Not everybody gets all these emails. So yeah, if you ever get any of these emails, pop it in the community, make sure everybody sees it. It's helpful. I will say, again, just to kind of summarize the question from Lisa earlier, I get this a lot, especially because of being on the partner advisory board with ICE. The idea that it's a funny thing, if you go back a couple of years ago, the tools that Lisa was talking about were charged. They were minor charges, but they were still something that companies paid for. And now it seems like every one of these third parties, technology companies, has like a free thing. And so that to me strikes me as funny, but humorous in the fact that it's so common, it's free. So why not put it into desktop from ICE? And the reality is it's SDK based. And so, Lisa, that's the reason why. Yeah, because they're killing them, right? And so again, most vendors want you to go to API because they only one platform also. ICE is saying the same thing. So everybody's saying the same thing. Go to API. Candace asks, do I have any experience with Document Upload Manager, which is apparently an ICE professional service plugin related to HostBridge? So, if Ellie Mae or ICE developed something for anybody through professional services, and it's a plugin, it needs to be API based. And so whatever you have from them, they'd have to answer directly. PSO is not technically professional services organization for everybody else. PSO is not a third party necessarily, but it is still not core. So it's kind of weird. They're not third parties, but it is third party tech built by ICE within Encompass. It's a weird one. So Candace, I don't know, does anybody else have any of that? Candace is asking everybody, do you have anything related to HostBridge? Yes, you should poke them, Candace. You should ask them what the plan is, just like anyone else. If I built you technology on STK, I would expect you to ask me every friggin' week, like, hey, what's the plan? And if I couldn't give you an answer, it's telling you something, right? It's telling you to raise a yellow flag at least. Maybe it's not red yet, but it's certainly yellow. All right, gang, look for the update for the rest of this year. We'll post that out into the community for the topics coming up. Again, we're going to get into specific workshops on how to do certain things because I want you to start building. It's very important for me to actually have you start doing something. That's my focus. That's my goal for the rest of 2025, going into 2026. So we can focus on other more important things next year. Let's get this base stuff behind us. And let's go into 26 clean. Thank you very much for coming today. If you ever need me, find me on the community. I'll be there. See you down. Take care.